I know that with everything I have pursued in my life, I have found success. It doesn't always turn out exactly how I imagine it, but my life story is unique, and it is my own. I spend a lot of time busting down stereotypes, because we're all guilty of it. We look at people, I mean, whether it's religious, cultural, racial, we look at people and be like, oh, I got them pegged. I want people to look at me and be like, wait, you do what? You know what I mean? It's not a shock value thing. But sometimes it is. It's like, you do what? It's like, I make records. You know, like, oh. And then they think, okay, you know, he's in his house. He got Fruity Loops or something, you know. Not the Fruity Loops. But, you know, and then it's like, if they come to my house and see, oh, his magazine articles on the wall. Had artists on Dave Letterman. Artists touring. Like, it's legit. And that's, you know, what I always hope for. Is to keep pushing that envelope. I always ask, why not me? Instead of, you know, I can't, like, thinking I can't do it. It's like, why the hell not? You know what I mean? Why not me? Why can't I do that? And that's something I think holds a lot of people back. You know, and that's the mentality I think I've grown up with. You know, I grew up in a household where, you know, my grandparents were kind of checked out. No disrespect to them, but it was like, if I was going to get shit done, I had to do it on my own. And I took that initiative and ran with it. You know, when I think I was 22 or 23. And I was gonna sneakily move to the East Coast, you know, and my grandma's like, be sensible. She didn't know. I'm like, I've been doing this, traveling out there by myself, you know, which is kind of heartbreaking to think now, because I kept it from her. She was smarter than that. She knew what I was doing.
Caramel macchiato?
When I was a teenager, my dad had bought me this documentary of Metallica. It's called Year and a Half in Life. They documented the year and a half they took to make their, what was called Black Album. I just was infatuated with this. And I would watch it obsessively. And I just was obsessed with this guy, Bob Rock, who was, I'm like, this guy's calling the shots. You know, and I knew, like, I'm probably not gonna be the best musician. So it's like, how do I incorporate my love for music and be a people person? That's a producer all day. That was like, to me, the ultimate gig. I was like, I could be this guy. So even when I'm in a place like this, honestly, it makes me laugh. Because like, holy shit, okay, I do that. You know, these 80s drums I bought really came in handy. They, all these like, gated reverb drums.
Press rewind, pretty little thing with the big behind. Every little thing about you fly. I just wanna thank your mama one time.
My father took it upon himself to buy me the drum machine I had been drooling over for months. I loved him even more for that. Not just because he got me things, but because he believed in me and my dreams, and was one of the best gift givers ever. He pulled the same stunt on my younger brother Chris with a guitar a couple years later. It still worked. My dad bought me a drum machine. My grandmother bought me a guitar. I'm like, let me tinker with this, figure it out. And one of the great things in the way that I learned was when you take lessons from someone, you learn to do it like they do it. If you figure it out on your own, out of necessity, you will, in essence, create your own sound. So do it your way. I wanted people to tell me my shit was bad, you know, and I still do. it's not just hearing what you're doing, it's understanding maybe your technique is not right or whatever. And one of the things I always bring up, because it really was career changing for me, was I had made so many records up to this point, but I had an artist that I was working with pull me aside and tell me how whack my drums were, you know, in the session. And not only that, but we had been flown somewhere. So I mean, this is career shit, you know, like it wasn't like just at my house making beats. We were flown somewhere so I could produce this person. And he pulls me aside, he's like, man, your drums are shit. I'm like, what? You know, I'm like early 20s going, what? And it broke my heart for about a half a second. And then I realized he wants me to be better. And when someone pulls you aside and says, listen to what you're doing and listen to what you could be doing. This is why in a culture, even where we are now, where people don't like to criticize, and you know, it's dangerous because you're not gonna grow. You can't grow. I'm not talking about shaming people, but it's still like, if you don't get criticized, you can't grow. You cannot grow. I grew up in the Midwest, you know. It was all like, they were listening to Motley Crue and Skid Row.
That's different.
Yeah.
Different than New Edition.
A little bit different, yeah. And I like that stuff too. That's the odd thing. I grew up listening to like heavy metal and, you know, hair metal bands, and also New Edition and Run DMC. It's like the shit I was like, they were like, what is wrong with this kid? It's always weird to me when people talk about their parents and stuff, where I'm like, what's that like to have a dad? what's that like, oh, you hang out with your mom? Like, that's crazy? You know, things like that, but everybody's normal is different, you know, and that's mine. So there's people my age that have never experienced loss, and they don't know what they have coming. It's almost a gift to experience it when I did, because when you get, I think the older you get, the more devastating it would be, because you've lived so much, and then you have all these things to remember, and then they're gone. But then when you're young, it's almost like a lesson from the jump. Like, well, I didn't really know them. You know, it's like my grandmother was always more like a mother to me. So when she passed, that hit me harder. That was losing my parent. And that happened in my mid-20s. You know, so that was hard. I think my teenage years have everything to do with why I am where I am. Because it was that whole thing of not waiting on people. I don't wait on people. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm gonna go get my own money. I mean, as a teenager, who doesn't want to do that? You know, I grew up with grandparents. They don't want to take me to the mall. They don't want to give me $5. You know what I mean? That was like a lot of money. And I was like, no, I want my own money. Okay, well, then that came with, okay, smart ass, you gonna make money, you got your friends over, you know, regular teenage shit. But then I was like, oh yeah, it was always like almost showing them up. That's really what everything is about to me a lot of times. It's like, oh, okay, you think I can't? Well, watch me do that. And it just escalated. So even, you know, it goes from getting a job at 14 or whatever it was, you know, it was the first day I could get a job, literally, legally. And I never looked back. I was like, I'm making my own money. My friends and I are eating good. We're having a good time. We're going to the mall. We're buying records. And it just escalated. Even when I started making records, it was like, oh, I can't produce it, or I can't move to the East. I can't move, like, I can't live by myself. Watch me. Watch me. That's what I do. I grew up in a place where people were just okay. It's like, oh yeah, I'm good. Got a job, you know, still in the same town, doing the same thing. And I was like, fuck that. Like, what kind of life is that? Like, and that's okay. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes I envy that. I have friends back home. I'm like, man, that would be great. So, you know what I mean? There is something comforting about that. But at the same time, it's like, you know, maybe that just wasn't for me.
I'm Patrick POSTLEWAIT. I've known Simon, aka Eric, since we were 5 years old. So as far as like what kids do or what we did, like we always did, you know, the regular stuff. Just with Simon, it was like modified a little bit, but he never let the physical limitations keep him from like hanging out with his friends and doing normal stuff.
Paris it was, you know, it's a great place, safe. You know, we were pre-teens. We'd drive I lived on the north side of town. I could drive my chair to downtown back. I mean, you could do that at 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night. Nothing's going to happen to you. You know what I mean? It's a safe place. You know, and there's some values, you know, that you do get some hometown values, but I think you learn how to be a person, too. It's like we got these core values. So, like, because I know if I would have grown up in New York, like, I remember going to New York for the first time and was like, what the hell? And people were just, like, lovingly oblivious, but also just, like, they're on autopilot. You know what I mean? It's like, and you become jaded, and I admit I've become jaded. Living in Philly for a while, then, you know, traveling so much in Atlanta, you become jaded by that, but still, as long as there's that core thing in you. So yeah, I think growing up in Paris was good. I never knock it. I'm not sure if Brian knows, but he and my grandmother broke down a lot of barriers for me. Grandma fought for Brian to be in regular schools and pressured the school district to realize that Brian and I may have been different physically, but we're no different in intelligence. Because of this, there was never really any question that I would attend regular schools growing up. My brother was the reason some accessibility was brought to our high school.
I do credit his grandmother, you know, the youngest of the two, you know, his brother Brian had the same condition. I think she saw that, like, as long as he had good friends around and stuff, she gave him a long leash. And so, like, but, you know, he always wanted to get out and about. We weren't just, like, sitting around the house.
What made me want to get out was the fact that where I grew up, you just saw people that grew up in that town stay in that town. Never really went anywhere. Never did any things they wanted to do, like, oh, if I got out of here, but it was just, and not knocking it. Some people are okay with that, you know, starting a family young and, you know, but I was just never like that. I was just like, why do I have to stay here? Like, this is world, you know, and I want to make records. And I think a lot of it, too, had to do with the mentality that, you know, I always had to do things for myself. So it's more that initiative and this drive I always had to just go out and get it. It's like, I'm not going to wait for you. Because, you know, as shitty as it sounds, you know, even with my family, it was like, I wasn't going to wait for them to come around. You know, it's even that way now, even into my adulthood. It's like, I'm not waiting for them. You know, a lot of my family doesn't even know what I do. And I'm looking at people that were older than me or people my age, and it's like, they're just content. I'm not content. Like, I'm not gonna sit here. Like, and comfort is good. It's good, but I've never known that. I've never known that. So to me, it was like, well, I can be uncomfortable here and be miserable and uncomfortable, or at least be uncomfortable where it's like, oh, I'm like doing some shit. Nonetheless, moving back home equated failure.
So when you went to school and then you had to come back, talk about that. Like, how did that feel?
Coming back home was devastating. It was failure. Because, you know, I worked at an indie record label. Things were looking good. You know, I mean, even though it was a bigger town than what I grew up in, it still wasn't good enough. And it was just that thing again. It was like, I would hit these plateaus. Where it's like, okay, this was good. Went to college, that's good. Oh, okay, now I'm working at a record label. Indie record label. I'm kind of getting used, but I'm learning how to make beats. People know who I am. And it was, once again, it's that escalating scale. It's like, I like how this feels. Now I want to take it to a bigger level. And almost to do that, well, not almost. In order to do that, I had to leave the label. And the only place I had to go was home, because I had no money. So it's like, what are you going to do? I had to go home. So I went and lived with my brother for 3 months, the shittiest 3 months of my life. Not because of my brother. I love my brother. But it was a shitty house, middle of winter. You know, I had to sell most of my gear just to, you know, pay off some of the company debt. And that was it. Most nights there would be tears. Everything seemed to be bubbling under the surface, and I was trying to figure a way out. I asked myself questions. How could I get to where I really wanted to be? What would I have to do? It was so bad and depressing that I was like, I'm gonna do what I gotta do. And that turned into the, you know, the stereotypical cliche one-way ticket, which was seriously true. Like, it was like, once I found out I could get out to the East Coast, It's like, I'm not worried about getting back. Like, why worry about that? Because I knew if I did, if I had an escape to come back, I probably would.
Simon's trip to Philly, his one-way ticket to Philly, I like very clearly remember because he called me when he was like headed out. I think he might have been at the train station in Indianapolis or something. And he was like, I'm going to Philadelphia. He's like, I don't know what's gonna happen, but I'm gonna go. I mean, I knew I'd been talking to him on the phone, you know, before then, and he had to be like, he'd had a setback in Indiana with that studio closing and the business closing, and like, so he was back in Paris, and I know that was super hard for him, and like his living situation wasn't ideal, and I think having that having that negativity was like a catalyst, and so I don't think he really had a lot of fears that I could tell.
To put it lightly, I was really fucking fed up. And I found that being fed up makes me fearless. Got on the train, bold as hell. Woke up in the middle of the night saying, what the fuck am I doing? No joke, I can't explain it. Oddly, that feeling went away so fast. It's like, nothing's gonna happen to me. Like, what's the worst? What's the worst? I mean, am I gonna get mugged? Am I gonna get robbed? Am I gonna get... And I was like, it ain't gonna happen. I just knew, like, I'll be alright. Like, and if it does, I think it'd be a freak accident. You know what I mean? Or an incident. But I just went on that and was like... And once again, it's that common sense I grew up with. You know what I mean? I was cautiously optimistic. Just everywhere I went, I just wasn't stupid. Like, oh, dark alley, let me go down, you know what I mean? I'm not gonna do that, you know what I mean? It's, you continue to have this common sense even in the city, and I think that's why that feeling subsided. I mean, but I also, in a weird way, I think I live for that feeling. Where I'm like hanging on an edge and like, let's see what happens. The mission of the trip was, I cannot go home. I had enough money to spend a few days in a hotel. I went immediately to the Hawthorne Suites Hotel at the corner of 11th and Vine. I had stayed there a few times before and befriended the staff, including the bellman, Steve. Everyone was incredibly supportive. The hotel staff would sneak keys to me of rooms that were not yet cleaned and couldn't be used for guests. I would use the room and sleep in my chair. What really carried me through, one, that common sense, mentality that I had, but also the honesty I had with everyone. I learned early on that if I was honest with people, people rallied behind that. That's why I got an apartment. It was because the family that owned the building, they heard about what I was doing. They called me. The owner of the building literally owned the property, owned tons of property in Philly. The guy called me. He's like, hey man, I hear what you're doing. Like, you're a record producer? I'm like, yeah. Trying to plant my feet. And he's like, man, it's pretty cool. So you need a place? Yeah. Well, we might be able to help you out. And he did. And I was like, holy shit, okay. And it just it snowballed. But it always came from me being sincere. You know what I mean? And never like, well, I'm the shit, I know. Trying to act like I'm balling. I mean, I have my moments, but I kind of was. But other than that, it's always been like, look, here's what I'm trying to do. Because you can't argue with that sincerity. And if they don't latch onto it, that's fine. My name was everywhere, and I was starting to reach what I believed were my limits in Philly. In the spring of that year, singer and friend Dave Tolliver called me from Atlanta, and he said, you're about to get a phone call from an Atlanta number, and you better answer that shit. Like when I came to Atlanta, same thing, Dee Dee Murray, Peaches herself, of, Outcast Camp, calls me, and it's like, are you coming to Atlanta? Yeah, I'm going. It's freaking lie, But I knew in my gut, but once I told her, she kind of knew. I was like, I kind of lied about that. I was like, I can't pass up working for Big Boy, you know what I mean? Like,
Simon Illa. The year would be 2006. I was the general manager of Big Boy's record label, Purple Ribbon, at the time, and we were developing new artists under that label. And I needed some new producers. I wanted to work with some new guys that, didn't really have a name for themselves, and I wanted to find a unique sound for the new artists that we were developing. So I had a friend named Big Al and my friend Dave Tolliver from the group Men at Large. They were like, Dee, you gotta meet this cat, Simon Illa out of Philly. Like, he's dope, you're gonna love him. So I'm like, hook me up, hook your girl up. So they connected me with Simon. We got on a phone call, and I promise you, like, I looked up and he was here.
I wasted no time asking Patrick if he would move to Atlanta. Though I was at such a great height in Philadelphia, I had the same feeling in my gut when I moved to Philly 7 years earlier.
Simon has the best hustle in the world to me. And, obviously we were talking, trying to get things together, come up with a schedule. And I'm like, well, so when are you going to be in Atlanta? He's like, oh, I'll be there next week, Dee. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, can you schedule some time for me? He's like, sure, I'll try to find some time for you. I've got some meetings and stuff, but I think we can spend some time together. And he was here, and he did tell me later, years later, well, maybe some months later, that whole story was fabricated. Like, he was gonna be here. He made his way here. As soon as we got off the phone, they got together and made up a plan. He was like, oh, I told this girl I was coming here next week, so we gotta go. And he and his friends packed up the van, and they were here, working with equipment, ready, coming out of the van with with racks and stuff, like ready to go. And I'm like, okay. So it was great. I loved it. He has the best hustle. Like, there's no excuses for nobody in this world. When you meet Simon and you just understand where he's coming from, and you experience his drive and his ambition, it's just so inspirational. It makes me keep going. To know that he's got challenges, but he does not let any one of those challenges stop him from doing what he wants to do.
My name's Kyle Lucas. I'm an MC from Marietta, Georgia. I met Simon 8 years ago. I used to be in a band called Vonnegut, and he produced the majority of it, and then we started doing solo stuff. So I met him online on MySpace, back when MySpace was popular.
Simon was like, who is this cat? Some cat named Kyle, hit me up, because Facebook trickery and MySpace trickery was real back then. So he was like, Dee, do you know this cat Kyle? And I'm like, yeah, he works with our group Vonnegut. He was like, well, yeah, he hit me up and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, well, surprisingly enough, that's the next project that is on my agenda to get started. And we matched them up, Kyle and Neil, and they made magic together. They made a project together that is unbelievable, and I wish it really would have, really saw the light of day. But he just went in, did the Simon thing, recorded vocals. He's an amazing vocal producer, as well as a music producer.
I don't know control cars.
I don't think I played with one of these since I was in kindergarten.
Really? Sorry to hear that.
Look at me, I'm doing horrible. Right, with my old band Vonnegut, we were signed to Big Boy from Outkast, Purple Ribbon. Simon was working with Dee Murray, who was the general manager at Purple Ribbon, who handled our deal at the time. Simon came down to work with this rapper that Big was interested in. I hit him up. I think I sent him a friend request, and I think he didn't think I was real. I was like, hey, we're about to sign a record deal with Outkast. And he was like, all right, cool.
So what I did was I have the box that it came in sitting under the desk. So what I do is I sit the box on the couch, sit the car in it, turned on, sit it on the ground, and then I back the ar out of the garage. It's the only way I can get it on the floor by myself. It's like, what am I gonna do? I can't drop it on the floor. I was trying to pull this maneuver where I could. It really is slippery.
There you go.
I've been trying to do that forever. I was like, can I drive it around the kitchen counter without looking? Yeah, I used to be obsessed with radio control cars. Sorry.
I think his work ethic is up there. We always get down on each other because we don't think we do enough. In actuality, we do so much. But I think that's what drives us, is that we always feel like we need to do something and we're not working. I think Simon showed me that I can come in, record, not be frustrated, and be productive, and it'd be very fruitful. the session as opposed to just running in a circle.
Don't even get me started on you so-called artists. Half-witted, half-hearted, still fully retarded. Rest in peace to this beat dog, dearly departed. How you like them apples? Genius bars, I'm at odds with. Rappers still seem involved, but got me nauseous. Tracks so obnoxious, sounded like dog shit.
So he's seen me like at my lowest and then at my highest. So I think that goes to show just about more than just working professionally, just the type of person he is and how much I value his friendship, because he doesn't have to work with me, and I don't have to work with him. There's a million people, but we've been doing it consistently for like 8 years, so yeah, something must be going right. Something must be going well. He showed me that anything's possible. Like anything is possible. I think Simon's whole aura is very positive, and there's many, many times when we're not even recording, or I'm just like fall into a depression, and he always seems to. We kind of tend to balance each other out, where if he's sad and depressed and I'm in a good mood, then we kind of he always balances me out, man. So I enjoy working with him, and I enjoy being his friend.
My name's Steve LILLYWHITE. I'm a music producer. I've been very lucky over the years. I have 6 Grammy Awards, worked with some great people including U2, Rolling Stones, 30 Seconds to Mars, The Killers. Well, when I first saw Simon, it's what everyone does, is they think, well, what a little guy. This doesn't last for very long, because you realise that he doesn't really think of himself like that, you know. And when you get to know him, you realise he is one of the biggest people I've ever met. And he has such a big spirit. And I think the greatest thing about him maybe is that, you know, I mean, he's very talented, but he's so inspirational. Personally, I often think when I get depressed or I get down, and one of my ways out of it is I think of Simon, and I think of the things he's been through in his life and how happy he is. And I go, what? Oh my God, I must be so thankful for what I've got, you know. So it's a very, very good way for me to remain happy to have Simon as my friend. I view him as inspirational in the same way that I would like to feel myself as being inspirational, in the fact that I can inspire people to do their best work. And we do it by whatever means necessary. The reality of it is, he is who he is, you know. So make the most of it. Make the most of everything, of all your attributes. You know, I don't think there's no rules that say you can't do that. That's life. And he has enough adversities that he has to deal with on a day-to-day basis, that why not, you know, take some of the praise and say, yeah, you know, because he is confident. That was one of the things that I noticed first off, was his self-confidence and his, you know, not apologizing for who he was. And that's a great thing about Simon.
He has the best heart. You know, Simon he's a good dude. You know, he's trustworthy. You know, he does whatever he says he's gonna do. You know, I trust him with everything. Like you know, he lived here for a while. Like I let him live in my home. You know, when he first came here, I was living in another home, and he just needed some place to stay. When he decided that Atlanta was gonna be his home, and I'm like, hey, stay here. You know, we turned this place into a studio, and we were cranking out some great music. We had writers coming in through here, so you know, he's a connector of people. He's a great relationship establisher and a relationship maintainer. You know, he meets people, and if he likes you, he loves you. You know, and if you don't, you know that too. But the thing that I appreciate most about Simon is his honesty, you know, and his trustworthiness, and, you know, just his heart in general. Like, he has a great heart. He's a good person, you know, and I love him. I love him. It's more than just, you know, a dude I met in 2006. You know, he's my brother. He's my friend. He's my baby daddy. And I'll always ride for him. You know, Simon can call me at 2 o'clock in the morning and be like, hey, I'm going to need you to come and do this, blah, 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 blah. And I will not hesitate to get up and do it. He's got my heart.
But never take what you learn as being the rules. Take what you learn as being what is good for me. You know, it's not like school. I was not very good at school, but the idea of school that you blindly follow what they teach you is probably right for kids, because you know, you have to have that. But once you get into the real world, it's not that. It's having your antenna in a place where you're taking the things that you feel are good for you. And that is also one of those things that makes a great producer. And again, I think Simon has these elements.
Simon has taught me to be on point. You know, you have to cross your T's and dot your I's with Simon. You know, he really takes your thinking to the next level. He pushes me to be a better executive, because you gotta work for him. Like, I mean, if you're working for Simon and he's calling you like, hey, Diddy, so, you know, did you hear from such and such today? And I'm like, no. I'll call him again. But, you know, he really pushes people. He pushes you. And it's all that drive. It's all that no excuses thing with Simon. I keep saying no excuses over and over again because there's really no excuse for any of us.